Live.
All right, there we go.
In case you don't know, we show you that.
All right, welcome everyone. All of those of you joining us now on Instagram. This Nobody Asked for This, which is our lecture series that nobody asked me to do, but I decided to do anyway because I'm curious about all of them. And this is our first live edition, so thank you all for being here. Round of applause just for being here and listening. So we're also here on the occasion of ALCHEMY, which is a show of photographic works by Cynthia Alexandra, who we have here with us. And we're going to get into a quick conversation, just kind of unwrapping a lot of things about practice, process, and personality, and just how you can come from anywhere and create based on the things that you've experienced and the way that you see the world. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We've talked about kind of, baseline things. You are a millennial, correct?
Correct.
So it means that your movie references would be like Mean Girls,
Unfortunately, yes.
things like that.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be a good one.
That's good. It's good for jokes. And you grew up in Cologne, right?
Yes, I did.
I mean, yes.
It has different significant, obviously that has kind of like you. Yes.
There's that too, right. But that's definitely not like right next door to Los Angeles. So it's a different way of growing up.
Correct.
It's a bit more suburban, I guess you'd say.
Yes, it is.
How would you describe your time growing up there, just like grade school, going to high school? Like, what was it like as far as things that you saw, movies that you watched, art that you may have come across, culture-wise, and just like, what was it like?
My family, I grew up very Catholic, so I went to private school from, preschool all the way through college.
Okay.
But first grade through college was all religious parochial school. So I was fortunate enough for my mom to send me to private schools, but it was a very conservative way of growing up, that's for sure. And in terms of art, that wasn't something that I was encouraged to spend too much time on. I played the piano since I was 5, but that's kind of a similar thread for anyone who's Asian or Pacific Islands descent. So I played that from the time I was 5 until 18. But in terms of art, I was never around anyone else who was an artist. I wasn't really around anyone who was an entrepreneur. I definitely had a more conservative career path that I felt like was ahead of me. And in terms of exposure, obviously Corona is more suburban, and so it wasn't like LA where you have fashion around you and you have people really very much outside of the box.
Yeah.
Corona was a little bit more in the box. But with that being said, for the most part, the schools I went to, everyone was a little bit in terms of ethnicity backgrounds. There was a mixture.
Yeah.
And then when I left Corona, it wasn't as much. So, yeah. So but in terms of movies, Mean Girls kind of hit it on the head. I'm of the Bring It On era as well. Yeah. And in terms of music, it was, kind of like the stuff that's cycling back now as cool, the vintage stuff, like 90s R&B. Yeah, that was also where it was.
What's the saying that if you live long enough, you'll get to experience your childhood 3 times? It's a real thing.
Unfortunately, teenage angst as well, the emo and Blink-182, that was also in there a little bit, yeah.
Did this come out of piano playing or?
Sometimes, yeah. And that's actually the funny thing about piano, though, that was where I kind of learned to, connect with certain emotion and energy. Because when you're playing a song, there are notes on the page, but the way that you choose to push your energy out through your hands and the cadence and the way that you play it often emotes the energy.
Right.
And so that was kind of, the extra angst came out of that as well.
Okay. But also, I assume that the structure that you get from playing an instrument, right? You learn how to practice something until it's like second nature. You learn how to read something that's not words, right? But how do you transform this little symbol into an emotion? fruits of this photography practice that you have now. But I want to talk about how we get there. So you graduate, you go to college, you ran in San Diego, right?
Yeah, University of San Diego.
Right. So during that time, you're in kind of the food world, right? You're in the restaurant side of things. And that was part of where you kind of realized that, oh, I have an eye for taking pictures of things, right? So tell me a little bit about like how you went from just playing around with your phone to being given an actual camera.
Yeah. So there was actually a little bit of an intermission there where I tried to do the thing I thought I was supposed to do. I wanted to go to fashion school when I graduated from high school. I actually applied to FIDM and I did the projects and everything. And then the last minute, my mom was actually very supportive of it. She was like, I don't really understand, but I'm like, yeah, you could do it if you want to. And then at the last minute, I decided to go the more traditional route and I went to USD. And while I was there, I did business marketing. So I kind of did the thing that I thought was the safest. I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur somehow, some way.
Right.
When I graduated, and I was a waitress there, but I was a waitress to make money. It wasn't because I loved food in the same way that I do now. And but there was an intermission. So I graduated in 2008, which was a heck of a time to have a creative job because those were unfortunately the first things that seemed to go. And so I was up against people who were tenured, had experience, and I was trying to find a job in marketing or advertising. And literally one of the interviews, someone told me, we loved you, we'd love to give you a shot, but someone who has a lot more experience is willing to come in because they got laid off. And they're willing to, get paid what you were going to as, entry level.
Right.
So I ended up working for a financial company, and I knew it wasn't for me, but I kept trying because, I had a business card, and I had an office, and I wore a pencil skirt, and I thought that this is what I was supposed to do, but I would come home and literally cry. By the time I was done, I was good at what I did, but by the time I was done at that job, I was breaking out in hives. My body was viscerally telling me that was not what I was supposed to be doing. And I tried to stay on, and I ended up quitting. And I went into food because I thought, okay, for 6 months, I'll give myself space to, make some money, I'll be able to keep myself afloat, and then I'll figure it out. That 6 months turned into 3 years at one restaurant in San Diego, which is the best Italian food probably still to this day. And then I ended up moving to a different restaurant, Questoning Holdings Ironside. And this was a place where I was overwhelmed with architecture, with the 55 cocktails on the menu. Meg was there with me, trying to learn all of them. With beautiful plating, with people who kind of took on a more artistic expression in their lives. Even like one of the servers was a leather maker on the side. She just figured out how to teach herself how to create things out of leather. And so this transition was interesting for me because all of a sudden I was feeling these little sparks of creativity that were kind of dormant before because I didn't know that there was a viable way to explore. I didn't think that would be a possible career path for me. So speed it up. Eventually, I ended up asking if I could start taking pictures because I was on the floor anyway as a server, as a waitress, and I would take my iPhone out. And I would see a shot and I would take a photo. And that place, the person who was managing the place really encouraged us to take a lot of pride in what we were doing and what we were serving. And it showed in the level of detail we understood each thing on the menu. And they took it upon themselves to make sure we had that pride in what we were serving, not just like taking the order and making sure it got delivered.
Yeah.
So I, in a way, always wanted to honor all the things I had to learn about the food through photos. Ended up starting, to take over their social media, and then eventually, one of the owners was like, "Here's a camera. You can borrow it for as long as you want. Just try it, use it." To be honest, I ended up giving it back without really using it much. It's like, this is overwhelming. I do it much better on my iPhone. And so that was kind of where the spark of creativity started coming in. It was food, all the colors and the textures, all of the people that put their hands into creating that dish. Before it even gets to you, you have someone who roasts the food. Someone who curates the ingredients. There's a recipe that's handed down, perhaps of generation after generation, and the people who decide how it's plated, you know, so there's so much that goes into it. And that was kind of a way to honor it.
Yes.
So that was kind of the entry point for me.
And that makes sense because from understanding, like, again, coming into something that had pre-existed, right? So you did the same thing with piano. You came into, like, here's a practice that already exists, but how do you honor the people that come before that? Would be the same thing with food. And you gave the camera back, but somehow the camera still found you after that. And so what was different about the second camera that you got versus the first time? Was it like looking at the parallel, I guess I could keep doing this with my phone, or I can try this, or was just the timing of it, of just your mind just being open to actually taking on the challenge of learning an actual thing?
I think, well, so I ended up going to Australia to help with the project there. And the camera that I had while I was there ended up being a little bit of a time capsule for me, right? As they ended up being. But then I realized they were a little more artistic than like just the normal shots that I used to do, or used to take. And then when I came back from Australia, I decided to start, you know, the branding and marketing business. And so I would just add it on kind of on the side. And really, up until the point that I moved to LA, I still didn't think photography on its own was a viable career path for myself.
Right, and before then you were just doing like branding, marketing, social media, management, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And moving to LA gave me the opportunity to be sitting at a coffee shop and then all of a sudden sitting next to somebody who needs photos because they're an artist and they have a website they need to put together, and like, what do you do? And that happened over and over and over again. And when I first started shooting, it was literally like, I'll shoot for you for free. Do you want to put it on your website? And, you know, eventually I, you know, got a little bit more confident and started to actually say, okay, well maybe like $100 for as many photos as you want. And I would be editing for days. And so but being in LA is really what sparked it. It was just seeing so many other people who were doing things that were artistic and creative, and you know, the synchronistic ways that I could accidentally meet them, or you know, accidentally on purpose meet them,
Right.
and seeing the photos used in different capacities. And at that time, I still had clients in San Diego who were food clients, and they started getting awards, and then I saw my photos being used internationally and in publication. And then another client I had, Treehouse is a you know, co-living space. They ended up starting to use my photos as well. And then all of a sudden I was published in Forbes. There's my name. And it still didn't quite feel real, to be honest. It's still, you know, I had trouble, you know, I had imposter syndrome 100%. And, you know, still do that.
So it's funny to say imposter syndrome because there are people that don't have those same accolades that you achieved. But are out here like, oh yeah, I have the best photos ever, they're gonna pay me $600 an hour. And they get it because I guess the audacity of ask with that. But also sometimes it's just a matter of you hadn't had something to get through to you to be like, you know what? Let's strip all of the distractions away and show you what you're actually about. And it sounds like, from what I know, you had a point in time where you had a rough patch and you were looking for a way to, I would like replenish your own self-confidence, your own way of being, and stabilize yourself, and kind of change the trajectory of the people you were around and kind of how we got here. You want to talk a little bit about what happened like, after you moved up here and the retreat that you were on?
Retreat, yes. So after I moved to LA, I was going through a period of my life where meditation became the thing that was the most calming for me. I didn't know anyone who meditated at the time. I just knew that for myself, that was the thing that brought me peace. And so I began practicing it. And literally, I remember going into a coffee shop one time, and I have to share it because it's just such a random synchronicity. In a coffee shop, and I was like, man, I'm just sad. I just really want to hug. I'm having a tough time, a tough day. And I was sitting in the coffee shop working, and someone came in and ended up sitting down next to me. And we got to talking, but initially I was like, please, not today. I don't have the capacity. And of course, by the end of the conversation, he tells me he was from San Diego and you know, shared quite a bit with me. And at the end of it, he gets up and he's like, well, I got to go to work. I'm a meditation teacher. If you ever want to come to a meditation, here you go. Here's a free one. I was like, also, I know it's going to be kind of weird, but would you like a hug? So I stopped like, what? You know, would you like a hug? Okay, sure. At this point, what am I going to do? Say no? That's exactly what I asked for. And he's like, no, I have an Instagram account. Like, we literally have a group. We're called Infinite Huggers. We just go out on the street and like hug people. Obviously, this is pre-COVID. And again, at that point, what was I going to do? I had to go. So in the middle of Tom's coffee shop on ALCHEMY, I was hugging this random person in the middle of the coffee shop, and he doesn't own, of course, which was not something that I was used to. Just and in the middle of all these entrepreneurs on their laptop, just stopping and they're like, it's Venice, it's fine, and then they just kept filming. And so that ended up, I ended up going to the meditation studio afterward. It's called Ceremony and Meditation. Unfortunately, it's not there now any longer, and at least not for the physical capacity. And I ended up meeting someone who was an old friend from college, Corey. She met her for coffee. She randomly was in LA. She was usually in Bolivia or Merida or Peru. She runs a retreat company, so it's a good perk of it.
Right.
And I ended up meeting with her for coffee, and she ends up talking to me about being intuitive, and she's highly intuitive, very even psychic, and she says, you should be my friend Olivia. I feel like you two will get along. Olivia is the third person up there, and she's sitting right there with the red fringe. And great, fantastic jacket. She also made this beautiful pendulum necklace for me.
There's going to be a lot of commercials tonight.
Absolutely, as there should be, because there's some incredibly talented women in this room. And she and I obviously met and we became good friends. Corey made it a point to say, you should really come on a retreat. And I was like, that's not what I do, but I don't know how to do that. Fast forward, I ended up looking at the retreats only because there was one about female entrepreneurship. And I was like, okay, this seems like it's an investment. This is okay to do. And I kept getting pulled to the next week's retreat, which was called Manifesting Miracles. And I was like, this is not, why am I even looking at this? This feels too cliche, I'm not going to. But for whatever reason, I ended up picking that one to go on. And that is really what kind of sped all of this up. On that retreat in Costa Rica, I ended up meeting Sarah, who's sitting in the front here, who's now one of my very good friends. We didn't know each other beforehand. We both knew the person who started Infinite Huggers. We both went to ceremony meditation, but we were meeting in Costa Rica, finding all of this out. Yes. Meg, who was one of the retreat leaders for Costa Rica, is up on this wall twice. She wishes she could be here, but she's at an ayahuasca ceremony. Very fitting. Yes. And she was a retreat leader. She ended up looking at me and just saying, what do you do for a living? I said, well, I do branding and marketing. Sometimes I do photography. Didn't even have a website for photography. And she ended up flying out from Austin, Texas, to shoot with me. I had no website. She didn't ask me what my rate was. She said, tell me what you would charge for a full day, and I'm going to be there. And some of those photos from that shoot are still both of our favorite shoots ever. I didn't know how to use Lightroom, let alone Photoshop. I mean, there are like little people in the background on the beach running, like having a good day, and she used these photos for her website. And it was that retreat where we set intention, not retreat or the retreat after, but I was setting intention, trying to figure out how do all of these things that I love to do that I know make me happy or make me feel like I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
How do these things, come into play, and how do I end up creating a career out of this? And that was kind of the thing that got the ball.
Right. And it's interesting to think about what it takes to get out of your own way, right? Sometimes it's a vote of confidence from a trusted friend, and sometimes it's a complete stranger. Right? So what do you do really, right? And you have to come up with an answer for that. But the interesting thing is that the answer that comes up isn't one that's been practiced. It's whatever comes up in that moment. So as a result of that, you go on to take more photos, but you're still in between this all right, I need to do these commercial jobs so that I can actually pay my bills and do the things. But also, I want to explore this side of things, and also you're on your own journey as a spiritual and intuitive person that is presenting your services, and the space of people, and bringing people more into that particular practice. All of these images here also reflect really what we're doing the same. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about your process of getting to even doing this particular series. I know there's a photo competition that you submitted for it, that's right. But I'd also like to talk about this theme of every single person that is photographed here has had some alchemical change from what they thought they were doing to where they are now. So let's talk about the process first of how this even came about, and then the stories of the process.
Yeah, okay, good.
Sure.
Sure.
This is all you for the next 15 minutes.
Okay. Permission to take that. Got it. So the competition he's referring to is Sony Alpha Female. And I wrote it down at one point because it was a grant for female photographers. And I thought, oh gosh, I get this grant and I can actually just create for the sake of creating. And I really want to do this, right? Because sometimes, I don't know if anyone here knows human design, but I'm a generator, so I have like an enormous amount of energy. If I'm doing something that I love, I still have an enormous amount of energy if I'm not doing something I love, but then my soul goes drained at the end of the day. But I can do it, and I'll agree to do it, right? And so that's been kind of one of my lessons as well, is learning how to just trust and be like, no, this is a no. I can, but this is a no.
Right.
And so I applied for this grant, and the first shot on the wall, the artist shot, was taken actually at the top of Treehouse, which is the co-living space that I was referencing earlier. And I'm in Aries, sun and moon, and it was on the Aries full moon. And I just had this urge to want to not only take this shot, but apply for the competition. I had written it down, Sony Alpha Female 2020 to 2021. I'm going to do this and write it down. And I put the paper away and I completely forgot about it. And of course, beginning of last year, or excuse me, end of last year, I pulled something out and the paper fell out. And it just opened. And I was like, well, I guess now's the time. So within about the span of a week, I had called her and been like, hey, I know you're probably going all the time, but you feel like shooting at all? And I just knew that I had to take photos at that point. I was looking at work that I had, and I was like, okay, it's going to be about females, and maybe entrepreneurship, or this need to be able to overcome self-doubt, right? Especially if you're in this space and you're working on energy and intuitive and psychic space. It can feel sometimes a little bit. It's hard to be seen for anyone, I think, but especially if you're taking ownership in that space and you aren't practiced in doing so.
Absolutely.
And so I shot with her, and then I also just basically went up to the top of the roof and did that photo shoot as well, which is a self-portrait shoot. And my friend Kai, who's in here, helps me. She has such beautiful flowers in this room. She assisted me with, what do you need? How can I help? Just, it brought up candles with me, and I was like, I don't know, I have this vision in my head, and I need to get it out. And then you also helped because you sat on the bridge and you made sure that nobody entered that space.
Like when you see them filming in LA, there's that one random motorcycle cop that's standing by the cones, like you showed up fast. That's all I did.
That's all you did. That you held the space for me so that I could create without people going, what are you doing? Give me the shot. And so I hurried up and I tried to, apply for this grant, and of course I missed the deadline because I'm usually running like right at the end of it. And I ended up missing the deadline, right? And so I wasn't heartbroken though, because I was like, okay, we're on to something here, right? So that image was taken almost completely a year ago. This week, this to the day, we shot together. And so, very full circle, which is the name of that image. So that kind of spurred this, me actually thinking that there was a possibility to apply for an award, or to apply for a grant, and perhaps to start looking at myself in the space of an artist as opposed to a person attached to a camera, which, all respect to, people who prefer that mode of creativity, but for me, I knew that there was something outside of that I really wanted to explore. I just didn't know how to be able to So fast forward, there's another thing that I could apply for, and then another thing that I could apply for, and then I just put it on the shelf for a minute because 2020 happened, or in 2021 happened. It's happening. It's still happening. We're still in it. And then I applied once more, and this time I was like, oh, this is what I want it to be. It was initially called How She Heals, and it was about the women who I had the opportunity to shoot with in some capacity as they were shifting businesses, allowing themselves to be seen, and how they, oftentimes, people who are in this space, intuitive healing space, end up coming to it because they went through something, and they needed to figure out, the same way I needed to figure out through meditation, figure out what it was they could do to heal. And that becomes transmuted into something they can now use to help others heal. Whether they know it and they say that about themselves, or whether there's somebody who just is going through their own thing, and the way that they show up in the world, the way that they show up every day is inspiring to those around them and empowering to those around them.
Right.
And so that ended up, being the project that I could see in my head, and I had the images to be able to do it. And I sat there and I wrote out the grants, and actually had you look at it. I don't know. I didn't want to say this right. Anyway, I had you look at it because this is something that I know that you're well versed in, and and I submitted it on time with the images and everything.
This was very impressive. Very impressive.
And then I did end up getting it, and I was like, okay, yeah, this isn't me this time. This was good. This is good, and I'm on to something. And where am I in this? Where do I keep going? Okay,
We talked about, just kind of you have a friend that built a tripod or something, and it's very visibly shaken about it. It's that was supposed to be the thing. It's you know what? You have a trip to New York coming up. Go, just don't even think about it. Enjoy yourself. See some things. Just get out of your own head. Come back from New York and catch up. It's you know what? It was interesting. You know what? I think I'm okay about not getting the thing, but I do know that if I ever did a gallery show, this is the dress I'm going to wear. Which is this dress right here. So this dress is kind of the underwriter for this whole show. But it was, as someone that believes in people for a living, everyone doesn't give you permission to believe in themselves with them because they haven't given themselves that permission. Hearing her say, if I do a gallery show, oh, so you're open to the idea, well, then let's just do a show first. You say it like it's an easy thing to do. It's well, easy may not be the thing, but it is simple. You create a body of work, select a space, we frame it, we hang it, we invite people. And in between there is a lot. But that's really it. There was still a lot of, you were working through just, okay, but how? And this, that, and the other. You know what? Just take that project you were going to do, but do it on your own terms as opposed to fitting into those parameters. I think that intention started seeing different things, even in the shoot she was doing with existing clients, right? And so it's also weird to be a part of the story of the person who's out there. But it's fascinating to see how your mind just opening enough to the possibility of it changed the way that you approached everything. Then it was full speed ahead. Every shoot gave more confidence, and then we get to these pictures. I remember when she told me she was shooting the pictures with Ariel, her sister, as well as the picture of her where she's gathering the fabric. She rented a space. She never would have done that before. All of this audacity of doing more and doing more and doing more as an artist. And that created a very significantly different body of work. What I'd like to talk about is if you could kind of go through some reason, talk a little bit about the process of how the shoots went, because you shot a lot. We have 13 framed things there. We have 24 images here. You shot And this is literally like 5% of what she shot. There's a lot.
Yes.
Y'all got concept for like 2026. But no, how, like, tell us a little bit more about like the process of taking these issues.
Yeah. So when Jason offered this amazing opportunity, I think I still was like, I'm not gonna react to this right now.
Yeah, it was a couple weeks.
Yeah. We'll talk about this later. And I just want to state this dress I did not purchase. My mom in front here actually did, and I tried it on, and she gave her card to the person and said, "She'll take it." And I was like, "No, she won't." no, she can't. So, and then she's like, "No, this is for you. This is for you." And I said, "Okay, well, I guess I'm gonna have to wear it to my first art exhibit." And literally got home. I was so excited because Jason in fashion, he, the emoji like the mind, the brain exploding. Yes, it is. And I literally had the dress hanging when I was telling him the story of how I got the dress, and that is again when he mentioned it. So it was a very powerful place. But thank you, Mom. And so in shooting these, Jason initially said, "You don't have to do anything. You just say yes. You have the work already." And then we met and we went over the work that I had existing. He said, "No, I think you should just shoot everything new." What? How am I supposed to do that? And so literally within probably maybe 2 months, if that, because it ended up being extended.
Yeah, I think it was the first time it was about like 5 weeks, and we ended up getting an extra 4 weeks to shoot on that day.
Yeah, so the majority of these shoots were all brand new, and there's only one person on the log who I had not shot with before. But like Jamie, for example, this first image, that's all done in camera. That's not composited. Those aren't two images. Jamie actually came to me to take photos for her new website, and she and I met an intuitive class. We did that over 2020 together. We never got paired up, but I thought that she was super cool and she brought the best outfits on. I think that's the only thing I said to her was, "Your pants are really cool." She's like, "Thanks." That was it. And a couple months later, she ends up sending me a message and asking me if we would shoot together. And so she came to me with this idea of wanting to capture, somewhat of an essence. And I didn't know. I was like, okay, let's figure it out. I Googled some stuff. And then this image came out of it. And there were quite a few, but this is the one that Jason was the most pulled to, and I think honestly see why. But when we were reviewing my work, this is one of the only ones that he was like, "Oh no, this needs to be a part of it." And I was like, "But I didn't shoot it just for this, and is she going to be okay with that? I shot this for her." And he made the point of saying, "Well, this shows that you didn't need, that this was always in you. You just weren't shooting this way because you were shooting for other clients or trying to do what you thought other people wanted." And so that is, incredibly prolific to have in there. And Jamie has an incredibly unique sense of how she comes into the world. Her offerings are very unique as well, and she self-describes as quirky. And it was so cool to work with her in this capacity because she wanted something that was not inside of the box. And she was one of the first clients I was able to shoot with who came to me and was like, "No, this is what I want. I don't care. I don't care how other people do it." And so that's where this image came from.
And I think that comes through because we went through a lot of images to curate for the show, but that image, it encapsulated the practice and the approach that I saw that you are on the trajectory on it. You would just like close that highway down for like, so whatever the case would be. Let's not fall all the way down there yet. But that showed that it was possible. So again, and also Jamie, thank you for allowing us to use that as like the lead image for the show. I really that connected with me as someone outside of this particular community was saying but this would intrigue me enough to want to know more about the other women here. And I really went back and forth with Cynthia about that one because a lot of people said "Oh, yes, that let me know what to expect here," but still was blown away by seeing a concert about the other things. So thank you for allowing us to share this image.
And then, I guess I could talk about mine, but I'd rather talk about the others first. So that's good. And then the next, this is yours. So obviously the third photo in is Ariel, blood sister. I can say that because the other ones are kind of sisters in a different perspective, I would say, but she was going through she was going through her Saturn return. She had just turned 30, and and I wanted to offer her a birthday shoot. We had shot together before, and it was definitely when I was still getting used to a camera and used to like being behind the lens and exploring creativity. But this time, it was very, very, very different. And the way that she shows up in this world is something that's always inspired me and helped me feel incredibly empowered. I was going through any of my daily journey, that's for sure. And I thought it was really important to include her. Not only the photos, like freaking amazing, but she is someone who maybe doesn't identify as, I'm in the spiritual space, and she is very spiritual, but not in like intuitive and the psychic world. It's more of traditional path, and she is so connected in so many ways to herself and has just created this path for herself in order to continue to grow and continue to evolve. And just watching her as her sister, but also watching her just like as another human being moving through life and changes and transition was just really inspiring. And I think that's important for the people who, the rest of the women in the show are all mostly intuitives or spiritual psychics, mediums, healers, and she's incredibly healing to be around her. She's so supportive, not just of me, but the people around her. And I think it's important for people to understand that you can be that way without needing to have the title. And in the next installment of Alchemy, as it's a larger project than the first exhibition, will include more people who show up in capacities that aren't necessarily this, and then more of that. That makes sense. But yeah, these photos came out amazing, and I'm just really grateful that she was willing to let me share, because they were, they weren't taken again for this show. The next one is Christy. So the series there, I had never shot with her before, but when I was 22, she was the first person who ever introduced an energy healing to me. I didn't know what a Reiki was. I didn't know guides or higher guidance. They had not explored anything like that at all. And she had since moved to Kansas City. We met when we were in San Diego. She helped me through a really terrible breakup, to be honest. And I called her, and I was so nervous. And I said, hey, look, I'm doing this project. I don't think it would be complete if you weren't in it. I totally understand you're super busy. She just had a baby, believe it or not. She's, I think, like 44, maybe. Doesn't look like she's aged today since the last time I saw her. But when I was asking her, I said, I'll fly out to Kansas City to shoot with you. I mean, that's how important it is for you to be a part of the show. And I asked her, and I asked the other women in the shoot, where's the place that you feel the most empowered, the place for you that feels almost like a portal to like your higher self, or the place for you that has the most significance on your journey? And she said, actually, it's in San Diego, which is where we met. And so she said, I'm going to fly out actually to shoot with you. I want to fly out to shoot with you. You don't have to pay for it. I just want to support it. I'm so honored that you want me to be a part of it. So she flew out, and we met at Sunset Cliffs in San Diego, which is also a place I would go to just to be alone and connect. And yeah, that's how those photos came out. And she said that when she started working with guides and higher guidance and angels, they would always appear to her as butterflies. And so some of the fabric, she actually brought one that has butterflies all over it, and kind of signifies that. Because she's now, when she was doing energy work back in, back like over 10 years ago, she wasn't telling everybody, hi, I do Reiki. She was, very quiet. She's like, I do this thing. It's kind of like a massage. It's a...
Right, because there wasn't the vernacular and the...
Or the understanding, or the space for people to even be open to something outside of traditional modalities.
Sure.
At least traditional in Western culture. But so that's Christy, and that's how she showed up, and it was really wonderful to shoot with her and have her trust, in it. So and I can try and quickly.
Yeah, we talked about
we talked about that
photos from the original composition. Over here we have one of the two of let's talk about that shoot, because there's actually some images from that series that really have me on the fence about, we put this one in here, like, really just find it would tie the story together. But there was really, really cool footage. But that was the first one where really, really profound. I love that whole story. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about where that was and how that process was for that.
Yeah, so Meg is the focus. She's on the right-hand side there with a kind of kaleidoscope-esque. And that was all done in camera as well with a physical filter that I found, these old vintage camera filters. And so I put those all on and played, and she trusted me. I flew out to Austin to shoot with her for this, and then the other blurry one. So when I first shot with her, we talked about this. I did 90 letters for her. She just talked about this. She initially had a very different approach to spirituality, and it was very light and bright and airy and cheerful, and that's definitely an aspect of her. But since that time, I've gone to a few retreats with her, and I watched a certain energy started to develop in a different way. And as she moved through grief, for example, like losing her father this year and losing her dog, and then also birthing a child and doing it all natural childbirth and letting someone document it through photography, not me, but that's a big, and doing it all natural birth. A different energy was released from her.
Right.
And so when we did this shoot, it was barely any makeup. Let's go to this forest that exists by my house and go down to the creek, and I'm just gonna play my drum and let's sage and let's just see and I'm gonna grab dirt and she's just tapping into divine feminine and tapping into like earth and really just allowing herself to explore that modality.
Yeah.
And not caring about if her stomach is showing or too much cleavage is showing, and just just trusting and being. And these images are so powerful. It was hard. There were a few that we wanted to include in Yeah, but she has been, she's been such an important person in my life and my development, because I just watched her continue to embody the different phases of herself. You don't have to remain, in one space. You can allow yourself to continue to evolve. You might show up as light and bright and airy one day, and you might be working through a lot of shadow stuff or grief in another. And she is now, on one of the retreats, we set the intention for Sarah will retreat with us to graduate from the USC Master's Program, and she hadn't even had the interview to essentially get in. Sarah just graduated and started her first job outside of that. Amazing. Yes. And Meg put in the intention that she would write a book, and that someone would come up to her and say, "Your book changed my life." She literally just came out with a book this last month about body positivity, ironically enough, and a journal. And then mine was to have an art show. And so within the span of 1 month, all three things happened. So she's been pivotal, and she's a dear friend also now, and she's amazing. So that shoot was really, it was a different embodiment of her, but also of myself in photography, and just winging it. And like, okay, let's go shoot with this forest in Austin that I've never been to ever, and I have all these cool lenses. Are you cool with that? So that was that shoot.
And then next that's Jade, right? Jade.
Mm-hmm.
So that one I love because of the playfulness of it. Like, tell me a little bit more, because I really shot in her studio or home?
Her home, yeah, and that was her studio in her home.
Okay.
So Jade is many things. She's an artist. She is a teacher. She is also an energy reader. Not the newest thing that she's added to her portfolio of things, but she always was tapped into her intuition. She always channels, especially, and it came out in her artwork. And she, again, is also a good friend, and I was working on her website for her, with her, and I was like, these photos don't match you anymore. We need to do new photos.
Okay.
And so she's like, okay. And I was like, we'll just do something quick. I'll just go to your home, we'll figure this out. And so that's her art in the background, but she just approaches in such a silly, playful, colorful way. And it doesn't mean that she doesn't go down to the depths, because she's definitely worked through a lot of shadow, and she uses that in her healing work when she speaks to clients.
Yeah.
But she has this really gentle, playful approach. And I think it's important to include that, because it means that it's not always, again, the energy work and spiritual work and all that, it doesn't always have to be serious either. And she really invites the play in, and really invites the silliness in, the colorful aspects of life. And it was really beautiful to see how she shows up. I mean, you can see it, she's literally like laughing as she's jumping around.
Yeah.
And like, I think the next shot was like her like being a cat. I mean, it's just very, yeah. So she felt like a dynamic energy also happened to show.
And going from that to what is probably what I feel one of the most powerful of this is Crystal.
She's here.
Where? Oh my goodness. So that's, talk about that, including wardrobe, because that's important.
Yes. So Crystal, we also did an IG live yesterday. Crystal is Filipina as well. And she was one of the first clients that ever came to me that wasn't just a recommendation from another client. I didn't know her. She just DM'd me. And I was like, how do you find me? She's like, I don't know. Kind of doing some research and you popped up. And so I showed up for a shoot with her a year before the shoot was taken. And she showed up with her sister, obviously also Filipino, or one of her sisters. And she was actually also about to transition out from a similar corporate job that I had at the same company.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know this at the time, but I knew her photos would help her website, but she was also preparing to potentially leave this kind of more traditional path and move into fully developing her psychic mediumship. And she now just passed like regression therapy as well. She was getting ready to transition, so these photos actually were, as she described it, in many ways a healing session for her, to be able to see herself in a different capacity.
That's important.
Yes. Yes. And thank you. And she, and so that shoot is not here, but that shoot was taken at sunrise, and in dresses that were very light and cheerful and happy, and she's doing like the prayer. It's very peaceful, like the prayer pose and the hand of her heart, and those are beautiful. But this shoot is very different. And she showed up at sunset, and we went to a place called like Cliffs, and a cave, and I was like, I knew that she had done FMA, Filipino Martial Arts.
Okay.
And so the sticks are called the practice of it is, kali sticks. And so like these are used for, combat essentially. But it's also a way to get back in touch with, culture and your body and movement.
Right.
And there's a ferocity to it that we channeled out of her together. Together is co-creation 100%. To be able to capture these images and to watch the skies literally start to turn lavender during the sunset to match her hair was pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
I adjusted the colors a little bit, but that was a huge turning point for me to be able to honor Filipino culture and to be able to share that. And the sleeves, I almost get these wrong. Filipino. Yep. Yes. So those sleeves are traditionally worn for like weddings or ceremony, and because Philippines are really hot, so you can't wear like really heavy stuff. And so these are kind of add-ons, a very light, beautiful gauzy fabric, and she ended up bringing those. And I love the color, but I also love that she's not like smiling. There's no forced like cheerful, happy. I need to be polite. It's just this ferocity and fierceness, and I love seeing the difference between the first shoot and this one. Both beautiful, both powerful, but totally different and much more an embodiment of what I see when I look at her.
Yeah, it felt very rooted as well. Like there's a ferocity there, but it was more like a channel through her, which is just it's definitely like that one. I think the one next to it, maybe my two favorites.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, you remember me. The soundhealer, or is there Olivia with pink? That's Olivia.
That's it. So who do we have next to? Because I can't see.
We have Natalie.
Natalie. Oh, I can see it now. Yes.
Yeah.
Where was that shoot?
Sorry guys, almost through. So Natalie's shoot was in Malibu, and it was it's called Point Doom, D-U-M-E, not D-O-O-N. And first time a client said that, I was like, where are we shooting?
That's a reasonable question.
And we had to like climb over rocks and like find this little cove that she actually practiced sound baths at.
Oh, so you're physical with these shoots. You're not just like, I'm going to pull my camera out, take pictures, and go home. Like,
oh no, on shoots, like I'm sore the next day. There's an entire series I need to put together, people taking photos of me, and I'm like hanging upside down, I'm like squatting, I'm doing Pilates body stuff where I'm like, like this on the ground, army crawling like through sands in a dress, because I'm usually in a dress. But
anyone else confirm this? You guys said this as well? Okay, I'm saying head nods. I said, okay, all right.
And so, but with Natalie, we ended up doing that, and we ended up finding this cove that she offered some baths at, and her story is interesting because she's like the most peaceful, sweet, it's like, hi love, like her energy is very soft and gentle and very dreamy, she's, like a neutral palette, pastels, which is very, and she's also a soundhealer, and she also teaches now. I met her at ceremony meditation as well, which I think she was just starting out.
Yeah.
But this is the second shoot we've done together, and she was happy to shoot with me, which was really cool. She was at meeting me right at sunset, and again, we just went into full trust. And I was like, just play. You can just play. Pretend I'm not here. I'll move around. I'll get the shots, and we'll go from there. But yeah, that's what came out, and you can see her energy. It's very sweet, like tapped in. But the interesting part was I didn't realize this was actually her story. She was actually very angry, she said, as a teenager. And you would never, ever know it. And so this is something, or this app is something that helps her connect with a different side of herself and understanding how to be more in flow and to be okay with this other side of her. Yeah.
So then we have Olivia and then Sarah, actually.
Yeah.
And then
And then me. We're good?
Yes, we're good. Thank you all for your patience, by the way, as we go through all of these, because it's being documented. And also, it's a little bit So, was interesting to me because there was something that doesn't really exist in the rest of these, which is that fabric, the ribbon that came through, and the way that you were able to manipulate the camera and the focuses and things of that nature. That came out to be very interesting, especially the playfulness of it, but also because it was about breathing, which anyone that's ever done like hardcore breathing exercises, that's not a peaceful thing to do. Like, you think someone's breathing, it hurts. But you feel great afterwards, but my goodness, like, so to see it, oh, this is fun. Like, that's a lot. And so to name it, breath/breathe is fantastic. Where did you shoot that? Because there's like a cityscape.
Yes, there is. So again, when I approached every person I was shooting for with the intention, or shooting with the intention of the shoot, I said, where is the portal for you? Where is the place where you've always felt connected, or where you feel most connected? What's the first thing that comes up? Because most of the women, again, are, they're intuitive or psychic, and, we'll both see an image at the same time. And Olivia is also one of my, very best friends, so it was, it's easy to be like, hey, I have this day, like, we have time. What's the place you want to go to? And we kept kind of, going back and forth with spaces, and then she eventually was like, actually, the place where I feel the most connected, or a place where I did a lot of connection and thinking, essentially, is, on this drive that I used to do. It was a different version of her. It was when she was not as clear as to like how her intuitive work, spiritual work, psychic ability, like how that would be in stuff. She was a server, and she was, she was doing it, she was taking the classes, but she wasn't fully like talking about it, right? And and so she would take this drive every day on her way to work, and we ended up driving up Mulholland, and again, I was like, let's just drive and we'll figure it out. And literally pulled over on the side of the road, and I was like, are we good here? Are we gonna be okay? We put the flashers on, I think, and then just popped out. She's like carrying, it's actually really cute on her Instagram, there's a reel that she did of it, but she's like carrying a chair and like this huge dress, and I'm carrying the tripod, and cars are going by at high speeds, like honking at us and like cursing at us. And then we just put a chair down. And then she just sat there. And when we were talking about the shoot, I oftentimes am very visual, so I'll get like images and colors, and I'll get a location. And I kept saying, I see this duality. I see like you up high, and I don't know where this place is. But I keep seeing like almost like a connection of two worlds. And I keep seeing you up high, and I keep seeing color, and I keep seeing like some like fabric or like something pink. And she's like, oh, like hot pink? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh, I have this thing, like pulls. She's like, I've been like 4 years. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. brought it. And then I handed it to her and I was like, okay, just do conscious breath, like do breath work. And so she's like, okay, and then taps in. And I was like, okay, now throw the fabric at me, just throw it. And then we just kept, going back and forth, and it kept flinging it and kept, moving, and I would be like, okay, now throw it all at me. And, eventually we got this shot. But there's actually, there are many shots from this shoot that are so cool.
Yes.
And you can see her just pulling in the breath and hitting the peak of it and then exhaling it all out. You can see the energy just building and building and building. It literally looks to a certain extent like she's giving birth to, a new version of self or, being seen in a different way.
100%.
And I think that that's the beautiful thing about the gift. One of the gifts of being able to do what I do is I feel like I'm holding up a mirror for these amazing people who choose to work with me. And I get to say, look at you. Look how great you are. This is awesome. And then when they use the photos, it amplifies the work that they're doing, and then someone else gets to see them in that capacity. And then if they connect with their story, they're like, oh, maybe I should try conscious breathwork, or maybe I should try quantum healing, or maybe I should look at therapy in a very different way, and maybe these two things can coexist, traditional therapy and spirituality. And it's beautiful to be a part of this ripple effect, because that's, at the end of the day, it's like I get to help other people be inspired and empowered by seeing themselves in a different light. And these are people who I feel also go out into the world and want to inspire and empower others to see themselves in a different capacity as well.
It sounds super reductive, so I don't mean it that way. But it is almost like these images are the iOS update for somebody to themselves. It's like, oh, I actually got up here, but I don't have the images that reflect that I got up here. Let me make sure that I can see myself where I actually am instead of thinking I'm still where I started at.
Yeah.
And to have that is really, really important. That's really important. That's really important. So,
Yeah. You're up.
where was that shoot?
That shoot was in Malibu. What did you say? Yeah, it was. Yeah, on the other side. Yeah, that was in Malibu at a private, little private beach, and like I said, very last minute. Which is kind of like, do you have time to shoot? Yeah, we could go. Sure, why not? And this shoot. So for her, she's Lebanese, an Arab woman, and I don't know how much I want to share, but embracing her spirituality and the path that maybe is not as traditional as some people in her life may want it to be. It has been something that's a theme of hers, and so to be able to capture her in this space was really powerful, I think, for both of us, because it is somebody who is embracing her identity, but also refusing for it to fit into a specific box, because she knows that that's not how it's supposed to be for herself, and that takes an incredible amount of courage. Sarah just recently went to Lebanon and was there and led a women's retreat. And if you're familiar with anything that's going on in that area of the world, even to show up and be able to be around the energy of so many people who are going through traumatic experiences, not being able to, let alone sure you have a long line for gas, which is terrible, but also not having access to food, not having access to feminine hygiene products, not having access to things that we take things that we definitely have access to here. I'll put it that way. But to be able to go and allow yourself to be in that space and to see the suffering and still choose to be there and then try to show up in this capacity when she knows it's not the traditional one for women, it's really amazing. So to be able to, just capture a tiny little bit of it, to see how at peace she is just with herself in that moment, but then also to see the ferocity, of what exists inside of her. That's not the only image. There's definitely some of her lighting stuff on fire, which then she's stubborn. But to see the duality, that's what I love most about that shoot, is because you can see the gentleness and the compassion that it takes to be able to hold space for people. But you also see the determination and the, again, ferocity of a person who's like, no, I'm going to change things though. I'm going to do it. And even the cloth that she has there, I forget the name of it, I'm sorry, and I don't want to clear it, but Hubia is traditionally meant for men, that pattern. And so for for it to be shown in capacity also in like baby pink. You know, and for her to use it in the photo shoot was also something that was very symbolic for both of us.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because all of these journeys are very similar to what you identify as standing next to being as a photographer and showing up and having a gallery. So how do we get these images of you? Where was that? How was that shoot? And what were you hoping to convey? Or were you just honestly allowing yourself to have fun?
So these are all of them. And I knew I wanted to shoot for this, and I was like, good, they come out great, cool, if not, whatever. But I knew that this was going to be, I knew I had to do it. And so you've seen the background, I've done crystals. And I literally, like, yeah, I mean, whatever. I'm not like wearing anything really, it's just fabric. And to be on the other side of the camera, is like, I have been before. And it's felt very, misogynistic is the word that's coming up to me, but it's felt, you know, you're very vulnerable when someone's putting a lens in your face and they're zooming in and out, but then especially if the person on the other side of the camera is like making hissy sounds or like, you know, just being very disrespectful, especially as a female, you know, when I was on the other side of the lens, I wasn't in the same awareness I am now, so I wasn't like, hey, that's not okay.
Right.
I, you know, just said that, you know, and so to, in some ways, honestly, take my power back and be on the other side of the camera, and also to not be wearing makeup and to, you know, just like, I'm gonna wrap this fabric around me and see what happens, was really very, for lack of a better word, freeing. It felt like I was being able to, to shift and transmute, you know, my experiences in the past, and to kind of claim whoever this new version of myself or whatever phase of myself this is. And so you actually chose one of the photos, and you're like, I like this because it feels like it's an intimate, like, just like happy moment. And that is what that shoot was for me. My friend Melissa came and helped on the shoot, like she would like, you know, that's it for me because I didn't have like a remote.
Right.
And she helped me kind of set up some stuff. But for the most part, this shoot just I kept seeing in my head over and over and over and over again. And it was fun to be able to capture that moment for myself, I guess. And to, you know, be like, here I am up on the wall, and I'm not all dolled up, and I'm not, you know, wearing all of these things to make me feel a certain way. I'm not checking off boxes, so to speak.
Right.
I'm just showing up, and let's see what happens, and I'm going to trust it. So,
Showing up is sometimes a hard thing to do.
yeah.
But you show up for this, you show out for this, and you allow other people to show up for you for this. And on behalf of those people that got to contribute to this, we'd like to say thank you for sharing your time with us. You let us subvert a lot of existing standards and left a lot of room for people to interpret new ways of seeing, hopefully seeing yourselves. So thank you very much, everybody. Cynthia Alexandra. You all can have one of these in your seats. I'm going to read the back of this, but this is the brochure. You should definitely take this with you as a memento this evening. All these artworks that are featured in the Alchemy show are priced at $555. In numerology, 555 signifies the energy of affirmative change. This aligns both with the alchemic theme of the exhibition and the intention for these pieces being made for sale. Affirmative change for the artist's career and resources. Y'all, this is a fundraiser. This is so that Cynthia can continue to go out here in the world and create these stories, share her talents, share this art with people, and be able to do it well. So, each purchase here is a direct investment in support of the artists, advancing the growth of their practice, their resources, and their future creative projects. So we thank you for investing in the artists and creators of your community. You will see a QR code here at the bottom. If you are interested in any of the pieces, please come and see me before you leave. We would love to be able to make sure that you can take one of these home in exchange for supporting the artist. But if you just want to give something so that, I don't know, she has coffee while she's editing, or can buy a new lens, which is coffee, scan it, send it over. I will be storing that for the next 7 days. So please take this with you, share her work, share her Instagram, but most of all, book a shoe, buy some art, and anything else. Give her a hug and tell her she's appreciated, because it takes a lot of courage to share your work. A lot. So, one more time. We have about 35 minutes or so before we're going to cut the lights off and put us out. So, we're going to turn the music back on. Feel free to grab yourself some wine. And, yeah, come talk to us.
Wait.
Come see you. Yes.
Wait.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Jason, for the beautiful work that you have done to help me create this, and thank you so much for gently pushing me off the cliff. Thank you so much for the energy that you brought to this, because I don't think I could have trusted anybody else to be able to help this be what it is. You are a gift, and I'm so grateful for you. So please.
Yeah.
How do I stop it?